hello, everyone. Welcome to Black Meditations with Dr. Caesar. This is my third episode, and I am just extremely excited. This episode is titled In Our Own Image, Black Art and Entrepreneurship. Today, we have two very special guests who are joining us to let us know about Black art and entrepreneurship. We have Michael K. Wilson as well as Danielle Leveston. And before I start, I just want to give you all just a little bit of information about what is Black Meditation with Dr. Caesar. So basically, Black Meditations is an online series interview where I interview Black artists, scholars, as well as activists who are making a difference in the Black community. And so today's theme is surrounding Black art. Basically, what I say is that with Black meditation, I share hope through Black culture. With all the stuff that's going on currently in the world with COVID-19, the killing of Black men and women, the uncertainties of the world, I figure that we need some positivity and we need to know what are other people doing to try to maintain the positive Black community. And so Michael K. Wilson as well as Danielle Leveston have been doing that. Before I go into the questions, I do want you all to know that if you are watching on Facebook Live, that at the end of this session, I will ask you all questions. All you have to do is type those questions within the Facebook chat on my group page, which is Black Meditations with Dr. Caesar. If you are on the Zoom, then all you have to do is just say the question. You can unmute yourself and you can show your face. I really enjoy the question and answer session on Zoom because we have the opportunity to really interact with each other. And so, just a little bit about Danielle Leveston. Danielle Leveston is an art educator as well as an entrepreneur. She has been in the game for 10 years. She has a successful painting and popping company in which she goes and she has painting parties. And so she's been doing wonderful work in the Chicago area, and now, because of her company, she sends different paint boxes all around the United States. And now she's national. She's going to talk about what it is to be a Black art educator, as well as what is it like to be an entrepreneur during this particular time. Our next guest is Michael K. Wilson. Michael K. Wilson is a scholar as well as an artist. His recent series called Crown depicts beautiful Black women wearing head wraps. He has traveled all around the world doing different types of research on art, as well as presenting his artwork as well. He has a wonderful website in which you can find the different things that he paints, as well as you can find him on different research websites where you can read his theories and his scholarly contribution towards Black art. So welcome, Michael K. Wilson, and welcome, Danielle Leveston. So before we start, I just want to say, how are you all doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's nice to be on Black Meditations.
Yeah, I'm doing great as well. Yeah, I'm really happy and excited to have this conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited that you are both here. And so we're just going to kind of get this started. My first question that I have for you all is, why did you become an artist? What led you on the path of becoming an artist?
Do I go first?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't matter, whoever wants to go first, it doesn't matter. You can jump in, jump out. I'm not going to say, you go first, or whoever feel comfortable.
Sure, I'll go ahead. So as long as I can remember, I've always been drawing. When I was younger, that's all I ever did. My mother was an artist. quite a few family members are artistic in some way. But my like earliest memories of making art was when I was like in second grade. And I wrote this story. It was like about a frog detective or something crazy. And I remember I drew these little pictures all around the side. So I've been creating art since forever. One of the reasons why I decided to become an art educator is because throughout school, whether it's middle school, high school, I just felt like although I was interested in art and I took it seriously, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to seriously study art. The courses that I had in school, they were my high school class was kind of the class where students signed up because they didn't want to take psychology and things like that. So I really didn't have a lot of time to discover myself as a young artist. And so although I was doing my own thing, while I was in college, and Tiffany, you know about this, the McNair program, I actually did a research internship, and it dealt with working with children. Can you all hear me? Okay. It dealt with working with children and their artwork. And through that study, I realized, I want to make sure that I'm represented. I want to make sure students who might be interested in art and, want to pursue it seriously have someone there who they can look up to. So, art has always been around, but the education aspect, I really felt like I wanted to aspire to while in college.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for your wonderful contribution. And one of the things I heard resonate within your description is this idea of representation, really wanting to create images that look like you, images that you see, and that particular feeling and need for that representation really propelled you forward. So thank you so much for that. How about you, Michael? What were some of the reasons that made you become an artist?
I actually found some similarities with what Danielle was saying. Growing up from elementary school, I had the ability to draw. A lot of my family members on my mother's side have some type of artistic ability. So the earliest drawings that I can remember were drawing like NCAA or NFL logos or NBA logos, comic book characters, Super Mario Brothers. That was just the thing that me and my friends would do from going on from elementary, going into junior high school. High school, I think, is when I really acknowledged that there was a significant talent. However, when I left for college, I think there was a similar feeling that you're always inundated with, whether it's a guidance counselor or just like media as a whole, is you go to college and you try to you major in something that's gonna help you make money. So when I first went to college, it was to be a corporate lawyer. And so, so I'm on that track taking courses. And when you have electives to take, I just decided to take a fine art class. I was like, oh, well, I used to draw in high school, so I guess that's what I'll do. So I took it was like a life drawing course. And I noticed that my ability was comparable to the students who were majoring in art. And studio art classes are very different in college because they're about like 3 hours long. So you either have class from like 9 to 12, from 1 to 4, or from 6 to 9 p.m. And I would find myself going to the art class early. I'd be drawing all day, I'd be drawing all night, and something just clicked in me to say, you know what, like this is fun. I feel connected to it. And then that same semester where I started having all these feelings, that's when I took my first Black Studies course. And that was like this massive eye opener for me too. And I really had to come to terms with the way that I was feeling with, drawing and the kind of like spiritual, emotional, like fulfillment I was getting from participating in these courses, but also learning about myself. So I changed my major and I double majored in fine art and in Africana studies. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do, but I know what's gonna do are two things: Black people and art. And I guess I'll just fill in the details as we move along. And those two themes stayed consistent. So after I graduated from undergrad, then I ended up focusing on art history and Black studies. So, researching scholars and researching artists that look like us that's talking about art, or, talking about art, made by us, or talking about art about us. And, it really, that same theme continued on into the PhD. And I see it now spilling over into the process of me creating. Because now it's like, I want to create work that has something to do with Black people, right? And I want to talk about Black people and talk about art that talks about Black people, I think you're on mute, Tiffany.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really heard a lot of similarities. One of the things, Danielle, you didn't mention was family, how family influenced you as well. And, only because you're my friend, I know that, so this idea of family, being in a household of artists who in a household in which you have family who are artists as well. Also this idea of motivation from high school, right? Having a teacher, both of you all are educators, right? So you all know the importance of having someone who encourages you and say, wow, this is really beautiful. This particular drawing is really good. I mean, you have some skill set here. And so these are, some things that I heard, this idea of representation, the importance of having images that look like you, motivation from family, coming from an atmosphere in which you have people in your household who are artists, as well as this ideal of encouragement from older people like educators to tell you like, wow, you have a skill set that you need to further develop. My next question is, what do you think the role of the artist is in the Black community? What is the role of the artist in the Black community?
I don't think there's one role. I think that a Black artist can play many roles in the Black community. You have artists that are creating work directly speaking on the Black Lives Matter movement. You have artists who are your last Black meditations. And I think we're going to talk about this too, but we talk about this healing aspect. You have Black artists in the community who create art to heal. You have artists, I feel like with my business, with the paint parties, I feel like I heal in a way as well, because I'm creating art, but I'm also bringing it to the community as a whole. So, right now we have so much going on that sometimes you do have to step back from some of the heavy things that are going on and relax. So I think that there are many different roles that Black artists can play. One role that, and we already talked about this, but representation is very important, as we all know. I've had students where they didn't know that there were Black artists, like you never heard of any Black artists before. So I think that being visible, being in museums or galleries, wherever, online, being in the classroom, and then being able to educate people about Black arts, about Black artists is important as well. So I think that there are many roles that a Black artist can play. It just depends on what's going on and who that person is and their identity is to begin with.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I heard a lot of things. I heard this idea of diversity. One of the things of the roles of the Black artist is to create diversity. Also, this idea of creating unity, right? When I think of your painting and popping company, you are literally getting people together and creating unity and positivity. And also this particular ideal of visibility. We all know that there's still an issue with representation of Black people, and the role of the artist is to show the diversity of Black culture. So thank you so much for your contribution. How about you, Michael? What would you say is the role of the Black artist?
Um, in terms of role, I think that they're, you know, similar to what Danielle said, that there are many roles that an artist can, can play, right? But when you're talking about artists of African descent, it's a little bit different for me. And the reason why is because in speaking about me in particular, the way that I make, there are three people or three entities that kind of inspire me in terms of my grounding. W.E.B. Du Bois, Elizabeth Catlett, and Afra Cobra. So W.E.B. Du Bois, um, sociologist, scholar. He wrote, he had a speech where he talked about the role of the Negro artist. And you have Elizabeth Catlett, especially throughout the 60s, all the way up until when, she passed in the mid 2000s. Her and Du Bois, they always said that their artwork should be propaganda. It should always talk about the Black experience. And Afra Cobra was an artist organization that developed, in the late 60s and 70s, that were really focused on creating works of art that spoke about cultural heritage, what it meant to be a people of African descent, right? But also how that work can engage in not just aesthetic, but mental and physical liberation of people of African descent. Because when you look at what was going on throughout the Black Power movement, but on top of that, creating critical artistic theory that was grounded in the philosophies and theories and experiences of people of African descent. So it wasn't just like making to make and going off of feeling and emotion, but creating scholarship, right, and creating theories, right, that really highlight the aesthetics of people of African descent. So when it comes to role, I think that there are many roles you can play, but what I do believe is that grounding is important. And I think for people of African descent, like, you need to start from your base, whatever that base, whether the base is like culturally, whether that base is emotionally, whether that base is spiritually, whether that base is historically. I think it's important that you draw from that base, because a professor told me this, and I always bring it with me, that if you don't know who you are, everything else about you is suspect. And I think that as an artist of African descent, and it's been particularly, living in America, but wherever in the world that you live, I got this shirt. It says the Black community is where I am. I think that wherever you are as a person of African descent, you always need to draw from that foundation to get your spiritual power. So I think that the artist has a very special role in drawing and expressing that power in a dynamic way. And I'll leave you with this quote that a good friend of mine, his name is Fahamu Peku. He's a painter. He's based in Atlanta. He always says that historians, they will tell you what happened, but artists will tell you how it felt. And I think that when you draw from your base, you'll always be able to tell stories of people of African descent in very particular ways that will really attribute to our authenticity.
Thank you so much for those wonderful contributions. And one of the things I think about is I think about Dr. Linda James Myers and her theory of optimal consciousness, which says the role of the artist is to raise the consciousness of the people. And when I was doing my master's program, I looked at Black women artists across different genres. And one of the artists I looked at was Cara Walker. And I just believed that there was this particular way in which she showed, the antebellum South that really aligned with Dr. Linda James Myers' ideal of optimal consciousness. So this is this particular ideal that is resonating with what you and Danielle are saying when it comes to Black art. Some of the things I heard you talk about, Michael, was this ideal of propaganda, that when Black artists create, there's a particular message that they're trying to get out, and they're going to use art to portray that particular message. And when you look at that when you look at that art, it's going to evoke some type of feeling, right? So thank you all for that. My next question, you all have already kind of answered, you already kind of hint on it, but I just wanted to see if you wanted to add anything to it. How do you think Black art is healing to the Black community? When we think about what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matter movement and this constant of discrimination, racism, disenfranchisement, second class citizenship, how do you feel that Black artists, including yourself, are kind of responding to these particular ancient notions of Black identity when it comes to Black healing?
I think that, especially when we look at what's going on now, there's so many different ways that artistic expression is manifesting itself in how people are expressing either their frustrations, right? How people are expressing their identities, within this. For me, and it's actually a part of my research, one of the ways you can really see it is through what's happening with the monuments throughout not even throughout the country, but throughout the world. So for years, I've always had an interest in this relationship between representation and ideology and how those things manifest within monuments, but also how people of African descent and how people of European descent and Western and Eurocentric philosophy can kind of contradict and contrast each other when people are reading and defining what monuments are supposed to represent, right? So, throughout the country, you have these monuments that are, let's say, attributes to Christopher Columbus, right? Or attributes to the Confederacy. And when you listen to the way people describe them, they talk about history. And when you hear the debates around the potential removal, they talk about the erasure of history. And for me, you see how certain groups of people are looking at what the notion of a monument is in two completely different ways. Because, as to what Christopher Columbus did, you can't erase that. So whether his statue is there or not, there's no way you can ever erase Christopher Columbus. However, to have a statue of someone who has no attachment to the United States really shows that it's about ideology. And to have an image like him is about what the ideology surrounding him in the Western world represents, right? To have a monument of Confederate soldiers and Confederate generals, right? Not to be put up right after the Civil War, but to be put up during the 20th century when we're talking about Reconstruction and civil rights movements. It's about ideological dominance, right? And who gets to have those ideologies played out in the public sphere without disruption. And when you hear how people of African descent talk about monuments, it's about a feeling of how that impacts them, right? And what do those ideologies represent? I had a chance to spend time in Denmark when these two Black women, one was a Black Danish woman named Jeanette Ellers, another was a Black Prussian woman named Lavon Bell. They both collaborated to create this sculpture called I Am Queen Mary, which was, she was one of the four women who were involved in the first labor revolt in Danish history. Now, to have the first sculpture of the first public sculpture of a Black woman in all of Scandinavia, right? When everything happened this summer with the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and you see the way like the world erupted, people in Denmark, Black people in Denmark, we're talking about whether you're from Eritrea or Ghana, Uganda, and you live in Denmark, they would go to that statue to talk about what it meant to be Black in Denmark, to show that even though they may not have like a genealogical connection with that woman, there's a type of ideological and spiritual connection, being a person of African descent, that they were able to relate to. So when we look at artistic expression, representation and ideology are very, very important. And for these monuments, as just one example, shows how people are forcing the public to acknowledge their representation, to acknowledge the way history is told and how history tells their story, but also to the way ideologies that kind of define society interact with who they are as a people. So I really think that you really see art tell that story in a very, very particular way that's needed.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because just seeing those discussions, like on, I'm a member of several art educator groups, and the discussion was brought up, just pointing to what you just said, Michael. Well, is it destroying history? And like you said, you can't destroy something that happened. In a way, when I think of monuments and statues and things like that, that's a way to honor someone. So then when you have a statue of someone who, we're in this part of our society now where it's clear what the truth is about Christopher Columbus. So to still have these statues up, it's almost like, there's clear conflict in that. So that's a really interesting point. Healing also for me, I think healing is, we talk about this self-care piece a lot in our community, even though self-care has been happening forever, just in different ways. But right now, the arts definitely need to be considered as a part of self-care as well. Just Tiffany, your first Black Meditations was about storytelling. And one thing that, people who may not create art or have experiences with art may not understand that art is a way of storytelling. So, these artists who are, creating pieces to speak on what's going on, that's their way of telling their story, of documenting what's happening. And then I think about, I follow Justice for Elijah McClain. If people watching, if you're not familiar with Elijah McClain, he actually was murdered by police last year. And his story is just getting out there on the airwaves this year. He's a 23-year-old man, played the violin, was a therapist. So it's very touching for some people. And the thing is, well, this is this young man who, it's like he wouldn't hurt a fly, and he was actually explaining himself to the police officers before he was put under restraint. And I don't even want to get into exactly what happened, but it brings the question of, okay, well, are we surprised because he was this person who couldn't hurt a fly? And are we angry about that? Or are we angry because this can happen? You clearly can see that this can happen to anyone, whether you can hurt a fly, whether you can't hurt a fly, So when we talk about healing and, Elijah McClain and Breonna Taylor, what I see from these Instagram accounts is artwork. The messages, it's different from us seeing a poster with just words, right? If you want to seek justice for Breonna Taylor, now this official, but now they're creating artwork. So you can actually scroll through the posts on Instagram and see the story right away. So if you didn't know about Elijah McClain, you go right there and you can actually read about his story through artwork. So I think this sense of healing, healing can be happened by destroying monuments that serve no good purpose for our people. Healing can be used to illustrate stories of, our people who have lost their lives to police brutality. Healing can occur while we're, sitting with our friends and, painting and enjoying that experience and practicing self-care. So, it's our teachers say the thing, art is everywhere, and it really is true. Art is everywhere, and we do need art to heal in all these different dynamics of our culture.
Thank you all. Those were Brilliant, brilliant answers. Thanks, Michael, for, bringing the ideas of monuments, right? And with this ideal of monuments, we can even think of South Africa as well when we think of the removal of colonial heritage monuments due to roads must fall and fees must fall. So this is a global thing. And this is something that I want to emphasize is that when we have art occurring, for Black Lives Matter. This is not just happening in Texas, it's happening in Johannesburg, it's happening in Brazil. It is a global thing that's occurring. And this ideal of healing, the diversity of healing, and I kind of want to add on a question because both of you all create artwork that is healing. And so I'm going to ask you, Danielle, if you can talk a little bit about your painting and popping parties and how you are able to gather women and men together in these spaces, and how are you able to heal them? What type of transformations do you see? And maybe you can talk a little bit about this idea of art and therapy. And Michael, I mean, I know that you are doing all type of pieces for different people, and that the work that you do makes people feel good. But I'm particularly interested in your crown series, which shows the Black woman wearing a head wrap, and the beauty in that and how that's healing towards the Black woman, as well as Black aesthetics in general. So if you all can just talk a little bit more personally about how your own work and your own images are healing to the Black community.
So my personal work is very different than what I do with painting and popping. I do a lot of commissions. So with painting and popping, I used to be what I call it an art snob. And I was always, I don't know if I want to do that, and just over the years, I had colleagues and friends who suggested, you would be really good at doing this. Why don't you just try it? So last year, I had a college friend, and Tiffany, you know her, Shantae. I don't want to give her last name, but she was like, well, why don't you? I was picking up some commissions. It was summertime. I was about to start the next school year. So I was like, no, this isn't a good time. But I went ahead and did it. So one thing with me is when I decide to do something, I go all in. So I think people were thinking that I was just gonna, just do a couple for friends, but I created a business out of it. And I held my first paint party last September. And then like every month after that, I was booked. So, up until the time when COVID hit, I had book parties and everything. So now I am doing them online. So that is very exciting. But I love, as far as healing and being within a community, I think sometimes, and, as artists, it's good to do that. But as an artist, it's also good to get out there and interact with people who may not do this every day. So one thing that I like about hosting the paint parties is when I hear people come up to me, you know what, I had such a good time. I felt relaxed. When is your next one? I really want to come to the next one. And, even with the paint and pop boxes that I'm doing, like the at-home kits, somebody said that it was like her saving grace because she was stuck in the house with nothing to do because of, social distancing. So, and I never even like considered that, like, okay, I'm going to make you a nice little canvas, you're going to paint it. But, people really do enjoy being creative. And I think just creativity in itself, whether it's painting or drawing or, sculpting, making music, writing, creativity is healing in itself. So I think that, my role, I feel like, is to help people be creative on their own, give people that push so that, that healing space is possible. So.
For me, in terms of the relationship between healing or just my practice in general, the very first Black artist that I ever learned about was Kara Walker. I was an undergrad, taking my studio classes, and they had these Art 21 series. And for the fact that I saw a Black woman on Art 21, that right there, it created a certain foundation in me to say that we are present as creators, right? There was something about her silhouettes that had a very visceral reaction to the way that you saw and interacted with, with history. So the way that reaction impacted how I looked at the power of art, right? Whether people agree or disagree or critique Kara Walker's work, the power of art as to be able to create a certain type of visceral reaction really stuck with me. I think that when it came time for me to see what I wanted to make and why I wanted to make it, it was Juneteenth. I actually have I'll show you one of the prints, and then I can talk about the crown pieces. It was a Juneteenth celebration. I want to say it was had maybe 12 years ago. And I saw this little girl, and her hair was just like out, very natural hair. And we're talking about maybe, if you're talking about 2006, 2008, it wasn't in vogue to have natural hair, all wild and free, and natural in its state like that. It wasn't as cool as it is now, right? You didn't see it as much. So I saw this little girl with it, and I was working at a bank at the time, and you can read in some of the code of conduct, you can't have locks, you can't have this. So I was always really thinking about the social hair. So I saw this little girl with her, her hair just out, and I looked at her, and I was like, it's important, compliment the kids, let them feel good about themselves. And I was like, hi, and I was like, you have beautiful hair. And the first thing she said was, she was like, I love my hair. And she said it when she couldn't have been older than 5, right? And she said it with so much like passion. I approached her mother, and I was like, can I draw you and your daughter? And she was like, what? I was like, yeah, I had this idea. I'd like to draw you and your mother. And then I ended up, so I took a whole bunch of photos of them. And I drew this piece, and this is a print of it. And that was them. So what I did was I took a photo of them, and then I drew the photo. And so that was the very first drawing that I ever created that had like this kind of silhouette effect, but I also wanted to really capture the texture, of our hair. And the reason why is because I feel, with all the complexities that revolve around being Black, there's something very simplistic just to say you are beautiful the way you are, right? So, when I draw, whether it's a little girl or a little boy or a woman or a man, you don't have to have your hair done up. You don't have to be dressed up. Like, I'm taking a photo of you, and I'm drawing exactly what I see. And then when people see the drawings, they're like, oh my God, the hair is so beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, but the complexity comes in the fact that it's photorealistic. So I'm drawing the strands and the texture exactly how it is. So if it looks like that on a piece of paper, then why wouldn't it look like that on someone's head? Because it looks exactly like that in real life, And I think it's a very simple question, to ask. So I think for me, to just, outside of research, which can be very layered and complex, to just draw something that in a very basic level says that Black people are beautiful, I think is very, very powerful. And then for like a little girl or a little boy to see a picture of themselves and smile, so they know it's them, but at the same time, it can, this could be anybody's kid. I think that also has a very special impact. When it comes to the Crown series, around, I'll say maybe a little bit later, I noticed that there were these conflicts that were happening, particularly in the South, with like school dress codes, and kids weren't allowed to wear head wraps because it was like a culture day. So a student wanted to wear their head wrapped up, and they were they were talking about how that's an appropriate school dress. So kids were not allowed to wear their head wraps, but that impacts a certain demographic of people, right? And that I had a chance to teach at Dillard University in New Orleans, and there would be these philosophical conflicts between certain faculty members when a student would like come to class in a bonnet, right? Or a student would come to class in a do-rag, or a student would come to class, and you would have these conversations to say, well, this is appropriate to how you should dress. And somebody was like, no, well, you can do this. So just listening to these things, right? It really just played in my mind. Like there was something I wanted to do. I don't know what, but then I had the chance to travel to Amsterdam, and I did a heritage tour. It was called Black Amsterdam. Jennifer Tosh is the leader of the tour, and she would tell me how Surinamese women would wrap their heads in certain ways. Enslaved women would communicate either rebellion or just have various messages passed through the different ways that they wrap their hair. And then during that fire burn, I talked about that labor revolt. One of the ways that the Danish law enforcement was trying to identify people who involved in labor revolt were head wraps. So like I was learning the different ways that we as people of African descent create through that. So I wanted to kind of aestheticize that with crowns, you know, so people that we see on the street, and the way that you know your sister wraps her hair, right, or the way that a guy wears a do-rag, and how we, you know, embrace all of these different modes and layers of appreciation through that. So I just started to do a series, showing that, and it's the same thing, a simple silhouette, and it's just a head wrap, but like really paying attention to each fold, you know, and the smoothness and the texture to kind of use those details to say something that's also simple, right? So.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, and I think you all just make a really easy transition to the next question, which is all about entrepreneurship. You know, both of you all, you do commission work, you know, you sell your work online. People look out for you, you know, they want you to do their pictures or their parties. So I wanted to know what happened when you said like this is no longer just a passion that I do. I hide in my room and I draw, you know, or I only share this with my close friends and my families. What made you decide, like, wait a minute, this can be a business? And what are your kind of advice? What is your advice to artists out there right now who are thinking about transitioning from maybe being, you know, just an artist who keep their work to an artist who sell their work?
Wow. I think I knew before I decided to create my business. Aside from being passionate about art, I think you're trying to get to the nitty gritty. Like, how did you figure out you could profit right off of off of your passion and your creations? I started becoming more business minded several years ago with other projects that I've worked on. And I was always reluctant to just go straight out, with my my paintings and my commissions, only because for me, and I think this is one reason why. Are you able to hear me? Good. Okay. One reason why I have not fully went into my own artwork as far as creating that as a business is because I take forever. So I have commissions, but I'm always like painstakingly trying to make things right. And so what I did find with Painting and Popping is that I liked it. I ended up really enjoying what I was doing. And it wasn't the same process as when I create my own work. I have to sit with the work. Sometimes I rework things. So for me, Painting and Popping out, it was more manageable, I feel like, as far as with my schedule, with being an art educator. So yeah, I had already really kind of been thinking about the idea of going into business, but just kind of combining what, and again, what other people saw in me that I hadn't seen before. I think that really influenced me, because I had people telling me like, "Hey, you know what? You have you have the personality to do something like this, and you're talented. Why don't you just go ahead and step out on faith?" So I think it also gets to a point where you're creating your own work, and like I said earlier, doing commissions, and but I just didn't feel like um I was at the point where I was like, wanting to create this body of work, um but I knew that I still wanted to um continue to be creative. And I think that painting and popping, it keeps me creative, and it also trickles down into my own personal work. If I'm doing something for painting and popping, if I'm creating canvases to send to someone, I also want to get to my own personal work. So I think there's this balance that I have, along with being an art educator, um, that kind of keeps me motivated. But yeah, as far as suggestions for other people, especially creatives who are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, my thing is always just do it. I know a lot of people have different viewpoints about that. I've been in discussions where it's like, okay, you got to have your business license, you got to have your EIN, you got to have your website, you got to have every single thing put in place before you actually start. But I think starting is like the best way. And as you start, you can then add on, okay, let me get my business license. I can figure out what type of business I want to be. Let me, create my business bank account. So I say just get started, start with something. And I think that's an issue that most artists have in general, is wanting things to be perfect, and not just starting, but because I've dealt with my own insecurities with my art, and I noticed when I just started, or when I just said yes to a commission, I noticed things in my own work that I was like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Nice. So I think that it's the same in business. You do something, and then you see that people like it, and that motivates you to continue going. And so then you're like, okay, you know what, my next business venture, let's try this out. So, between having the confidence, and between other people showing you that they're interested in what you do, I think that kind of all comes together, but you have to actually start. So.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with this particular ideal of just do it, and I know I talked to you about this ideal as well. This idea of like, stepping out of your comfort zone, period, because as you know, sometimes when you are, for example, I'm a scholar, and so if you're a scholar, then this is what a scholar's supposed to do. You do the robot, and if you do something else, then you're not a scholar. But, we have to have more a variety. We have to be more open to people's gifts and skills, and know that nobody is just one thing. So you can be an educator and be an entrepreneur and a healer, right? You can write books and also paint beautiful images of Black culture. You can do that, right? Back in the day, we called this Renaissance man and Renaissance woman. But in Western culture, we have a very linear perspective of what a person can do. You can only do one thing, and you do that one thing for the rest of your life. And so you, as well as Michael, display this ability to do multiple things at one time and do them well. My last question before I open it up to the audience is, can you talk a little bit about the importance of art education in school? As you know, right now, it's a lot going on as we think about school in general. But for many years, the arts has always been on the line of getting chopped. So what can you tell the audience concerning the importance of art education and why we need them in our schools today?
I mean, I think that just like what I said earlier about artwork being a reflection, not only a reflection of who you are, but a reflection of how you see the world. When I said that, Fahama Pigou's quote that historians will, tell you what happened, and artists will tell you how it felt. I think that having those types of connections at a very early age is really, really important for you to be able to look at um, a work of art, or but also as a person of African descent to know that that art is not just a work of art. That it's in the way that you walk, it's in the way that you talk, it's in the music that you listen to, it's in art is in the food that you eat. So you art is giving you a particular language to be able to define the world around you. And I think that it's really important that children have that at an early age so they can be able to define their reality in particular ways. I think that it's because of the way art is looked at in the Western lens, it becomes a disposable commodity. It becomes something that is entertaining. It often becomes something that rich kids major in college when it comes to art history. And it can be problematic because there's a certain detachment from the societal need with someone's basic development, because kids identify things with colors and they identify things with shapes and they identify things with sounds, but to detach that as having a certain type of artistic quality, it's very it's very problematic. So yeah, I'll stop there and see what we can say.
Oh, I'd like to jump in and add to that. Wow, there are so many reasons. And, as art educators, and artists, we inherently understand the importance of the arts. But as Michael said, in Western culture, especially, gosh, within the past, I don't know how many decades, it seems like now it has become where art is merely, we're going to put a pretty painting of flowers on the wall. And that's art, but there are different types of art. And I think when we consider arts and education, we do have to get away from, I'm just going to paint a pretty flower and put it on the wall. And that's the challenge as an art educator, coming into the classroom, especially, I've worked in underserved communities since I've been teaching. So, the perception is that either it's not important as any other subject, or it's just about, I'm just gonna, paint and have something come, something nice that you made in art class. But, in my class, I do want to talk about why art is integral to the society that you live in, why it's integral to the subject areas. And I don't know if, there's STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, which is becoming, a buzzword now as far as education, but it's inherently been there, when we talk about arts integration. So, just getting parents and students to understand that art is important, and it's important for self-expression. It's important for narrative. It's important for cognitive thinking skills, solving problems. And there was a study, and I don't want to misquote the research, but I came across a study a couple of years ago that stated that interns in the medical profession were having difficulties like in surgery due to, not really using their hands, like during school and everything. So, art does serve a serious, substantial purpose. And I think that when we think of being creative and using our hands, that's like a side thing, but it's integral to things that we do. A surgeon needs to be able to function with their hands. So that practice that comes through painting and comes through drawing, that's important there. So there are so many different arguments you can make in support of the arts. I couldn't say all of them, but it just is. Art just is.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And so I think that's it's very important to understand that art is necessary. We need them. Our children need them. Our adults need them. So now we're going to transition. We have some guests who are here on Zoom with us, and I would like to give you all the opportunity to ask questions. Do you all have any questions for Michael or Danielle?
We can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on.
Maybe your volume on your computer, maybe.
Still can't hear you. Well, what you can do is maybe you can type it into the chat, and then we can just read it and answer it. In the meantime, while you do that, there was something that Danielle said that I thought was really important. I think that we often can be conditioned to think that if you can't paint, if you can't do poetry, if you can't sing or dance, then you don't have any artistic talent. And I think that what's happening, especially with the advent of like Instagram and with the advent of TikTok and things like that, you're really starting to see how everyone has some type of artistic talent and ability, which is why arts education is important, because it's able for you to explore one of the many ways that you have an artistic ability. The way that we do art, the way we curate our hair, like you have to think about what happens when somebody takes a wave cap off, right? You have to think about what does a barber do, with a certain type of fade and a lineup, and what these designers do with a bundle, right? And what that ends up becoming. Those things are artistic talents within themselves. And I think that art education is able to create a space for somebody to really explore how to express themselves, and how there's a lot of technical equity in that, whether you're trying to be a surgeon, whether you're trying to decorate your home, whether you're trying to, curate your own business and how you want that business to tell a certain story, that everyone has that type of artistic thing within them. And I think art education really helps fan that out in some type of way.
Hey,
Absolutely.
So my name is Malik. I'm from New Orleans. I have a question. For both of you as professional artists, has it been difficult to produce art during this time of emotional and resistance and Corona? Have it been difficult for either one of you to produce art during this period?
I would say for me, yes. And as far as the coronavirus pandemic, it did become difficult for me because for my business, I'm inspired by being in crowds of people. So once March hit, we got the word that we had to close the schools. It was like, okay, wow. So let's and I think everybody processed the beginning of the pandemic, at least here, differently. But for me, it was like, okay, well, what do I do now? And I think this, as far as creatively, whether you're speaking about a business or your own practice, this was the time in which you really got creative. And, for me, it was, okay, let me see what other people are doing. Let me be true to myself. Let me stay true to what I like to do, but also develop it in a way that, I can get myself out there and serve clients. And so I would say about late April, I got out of my funk and And, I started coming up with a plan. And so now it's like it never happened. And in a way, I never want to speak on pandemics or anything, being good, because it's not, right? But I think when we encounter any type of devastation, we have to muster up that spark. Was like, okay, what can I get out of this? What were some positives? And I think that, as far as being creative, you have to look at, okay, well, what did I do different? And for me, I've added on some things to my business that I would have never considered before. And would I have traded in, like, if someone said, would you rather not have coronavirus? Absolutely. But as far as now and where we're at in this state, I definitely, for my business, there were some positives. And it was scary because you just never know what's going to happen. But yeah, I would say that I felt some I felt reluctant at first, even, because I'm like, well, I don't really know where to start. But I think it just goes back to what I was saying earlier, just start somewhere. So another thing that's helpful is just giving yourself that time to breathe, taking that little break. And I think that helps as far as, being creative in whatever you're doing, just kind of getting back out there.
So yeah, I wanted to give the opportunity to say that if you have a question and you can't talk, see if you can maybe type the question in the Zoom. And then if that doesn't work, then you can always email me, and I can also send the questions to the guest as well. So I do want to give you an opportunity to try to type those questions. Yeah, and I still think we can't hear you. Okay. So I kind of want to, I just want to say thank you all again for participating. Again, if you all have any more questions, I'm going to, the video is on Black Meditations with Dr. Caesar's page. I've shared it. I know that Danielle has shared it. Michael probably has shared it. So you can see it there. I also will leave the contact information of both the artists for you all to contact. I do want to just say a little thing about these artists, because these artists are also my friends. And so their artwork has been very much so healing to me. So first, I'm going to start with the crown piece that Michael Wilson made for me. I'm going to show it. And so I was very excited to get this piece. Every time I look at this piece, it reminds me of my strength. It reminds me of my beauty. And it's just something about, it makes me feel like I'm a maroon in Jamaica or something, like I'm leading people, and I'm a healer. So I thank you for this image, Michael. It just brings me so much joy and has really motivated me in so many ways. And Danielle has taught me that I can be an artist with her painting and popping box. This is what I made, okay? I know you want to purchase it. I know you want to buy it, but I'm not going to let you. So this is her rooted, piece in which you can purchase, and you can, color it the way you like. But I chose to do it with the Pan-African flag colors, and I have the tree, and it really makes me happy. So these are personal works that I have that represents both Michael Wilson and Danielle Leveston work. And you can also purchase their work and have their work be able to make your space just more centered and beautiful and full of Black culture. So before I end this, I also want to say thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to my Zoom participants. But I also want to ask Danielle and Michael, is there anything else you want to say? Do you have one last comment?
I think I think maybe just commenting on that crown drawing of you. I think I think it really highlights what was discussed earlier, that art has a way of communicating certain languages that maybe other forms of communication cannot. Like if you don't know what to put into words, right? Because Tiffany, that was actually the very first crown drawing that I ever created. We were at the National Council for Black Studies. We were at I think it may have been the banquet, the part we were all eating dinner, and Tiffany had her head wrap, and I already had this idea, and I was like, yo, I said, Tiffany, can I take a picture of your head wrap? Tiffany looked at me like I was crazy, like, why do you want to take this profile picture? I'm like, just trust me. And I took the picture, like, yeah, whatever. So she still took the picture, move on with her life, and it had to be maybe 2 years later I drew the picture, and I didn't even show Tiffany until it was complete. And I said, Tiffany, look. And to see the reaction, and for Tiffany to say, Mike, this is how you see me? And I'm like, this is how you look. And I think that really created a foundation to move forward with the thing. And it really just solidified in me the fact that art really communicates something that other forms of communication might not be able to. That's why I think it's important for all of us to be able to interact with art as early as we can, so we can find these different ways to communicate.
Thank you all so much. And I guess just one more thing. Is there anything special you want to talk to the audience about, how they can contact you? I will do it on the group page, but it's something about, having that information come from the artists themselves.
Sure. My business page on Facebook, you can find me as Paintin', and that's no G. So my business is Paintin' and Poppin' Traveling Paint Parties LLC, but there's no G on Paintin' or Poppin'. I'm also on Instagram as Paintin' and Poppin' Parties. My website is coming very, very soon, but you can also contact me directly at paintinandpoppin@gmail.com.
So for me, I have a website. It's michaelwilsonartist.com, and that has my artworks that I've made. That's available, prints that are available for sale. Also, the website is actually going to be reworked, and within the next month, it's going to be relaunched and actually have the scholar aspect of me. So when you go on the website, you'll be able to click on either panel discussions or the research projects that I've done, the publications written, in addition to be able to see the artwork. So now you can see like all the different aspects of how I view, and engage with the art world. In the meantime, you can follow my Instagram. It's Black Artifacts, spelled regular, BLACKARTI facts, right? Just spelled normal. And I post artwork, an occasional meme, but mostly it's just about art and Black people. That is the majority of content that is on my work. And I like to ride bikes, so every once in a while you can see a picture of me riding a bike. But artwork and Black people is on the Instagram. It's Black Artifacts.
Thank you so much, Michael and Danielle, for being my next guests and In Our Own Image, Black Art and Entrepreneurship. Thank you to the audience who have taken the time to view this. This video will be shared online. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the Black Meditations with Dr. Caesar Facebook page. And I also will share their artist information there as well. Until next week, thank you and have a beautiful day and stay safe. Goodbye.